that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 348th edition of Energy Week. Today is the 5th of December. That's the day that we're recording. We're going to start our news reporting with Wednesday, November 27th, which was the day of our last show, which had to be recorded on Wednesday because obviously Thursday was Thanksgiving. So we're doing eight days this time around, and I want to remind everybody that if you want to support Energy Week, you can go to BrattleboroTV.org. Make a donation there. Near the bottom of the screen is a thing you can click on that says support. Support local broadcasting. That's what it says. Okay. You click on that. You can click on a payment method, which would be PayPal or a credit card, and then below the amount where you put in the amount that you're donating, there's maybe an inch and a half or 2 inches below it on your screen. You'll see a thing that asks for notes, and just say that it's for Energy Week to credit it to this show. I should explain. Forgot. Could you put us both up?
I can try.
Just to say, this is Energy Week with George Harvey and the amazing Tom Fennell in the flesh. Okay.
I'll put you back up.
Every day I get up and I go to the internet early in the morning and find what news I can relating to energy and climate change and a couple of other things like plastics pollution and stuff like that.
Little stuff like that.
And read about a what was it, a sperm whale that they found dead with 200 and some odd pounds of plastic.
Yeah. Ooh.
We have a problem. We have lots of problems. Anyway, we're starting on November the 20th.
We got a solution, but nobody wants to install it. I mean, you got to be responsible for your own garbage.
That's right. Okay, why don't we, I should tell people where they can get the website.
That would help.
It is geoharvey.com. You can read any of the articles that we're talking about today by going to geoharvey.com. Go to the date. We're starting on November 27th. You can click on the calendar to get to the date. And then when you do that, you've only got 10 or 15 things to look through to find the one.
Some of them are well worth looking up.
Absolutely,
I mean, as I've said on the show before, we could devote a whole show just to one of them sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll try and call your attention to the better ones. What are we going to do, 21 of them?
Tom reads these better than I do. I spend all my time looking at stupid headlines. I look at about 400 headlines a day.
Well, I bet you do.
Yeah, and then you figure take the number of days from the 2nd of June 2012 to now, multiply the two together, and you'll see the number of headlines I've looked at over the years.
More than my poor brain can contemplate.
Well, it's something around 1 million. Anyway, we are starting with a picture of a race car.
Sports car we're going to put up here.
Yeah, and we have an item from Clean Technica, and again, for the third time, this is November 27th. So what do you have for title, Tom?
Volkswagen Motorsport says Auf Wiedersehen to internal combustion engines. So apparently that racing car you see there is electric.
It is. Volkswagen Motorsport, the arm of the company that coordinates all factory racing programs, says it will no longer use internal combustion engines in factory-sponsored automotive competitions. From now on, if a race car has a VW badge on it, it will be electric. That actually has a VW badge on it in the middle of the front, but it's very, very difficult to see.
See if I can pull it up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy to see.
Not easy to see. However, this makes me think about the term Auf Wiedersehen, which means until we see each other again. In some parts of Germany, they say Auf Wiederschauen, which Sehen is, I believe, cognate with see. Wiedersehen means see again. Wiederschauen means show again, because schauen is.
Okay.
But in some parts of Germany, and this relates to this particular image, they don't say Auf Wiedersehen or Auf Wiederschauen so much as they say Auf Wiedergucken. A person will point at something and say, "Guck mal da." And gucken, I've always suspected, is related to or cognate with the English word gawk. So put the picture up.
And they gawk at it.
Put the picture up, Tom.
Up goes the picture. Let's go.
Yeah, gawk at that. Okay.
Well, this is interesting. It's about Volkswagen, and in the article they say Volkswagen's been criticized by saying they're going to put up all sorts of electric cars and doing nothing.
Oh,
And the article says, well, now they're getting on the ball. They got a whole bunch of electric vehicles planned for us.
They wouldn't be abandoning internal combustion engines for race cars and keeping them for passenger vehicles.
I don't think so. Well, it's, as we will touch base on a little bit later on in this show, it's starting to be competitive in every way.
Yes.
So there's a little quick takeaway here.
Okay.
And this is what's going on. Electric racing vehicles are a way to show people that EVs can be fun and powerful. Okay, that can help shape public opinion and drive the EV revolution forward.
Yes.
I got news for you. It's going to be economics.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it will be, as we'll talk about later on in the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, our next item is from Renews.
It is from Renews, I guess.
It's from Renews.
Yes, Renews. Siemens Gamesa, 11 megawatt giants lined up for HKZ. Oh, we'll find out what HKZ is. You will tell us. In any case, this is a new large wind turbine.
We actually talked about this turbine last week. They had just introduced this last week. And
GE's got 12, they're at 11.
Yeah, and the thing that I find interesting about this particular thing is they announced this turbine, and then the next day was this particular article. Vattenfall will use Siemens Gamesa newly upgraded 11 megawatt DD193 turbine for the 750 megawatt Hollandse Kust Zuid. I don't know how to pronounce Dutch. But 1 and 2.
One of the things, it's almost translatable to English. Holland means Dutch.
Yeah.
Kust means coast.
Coast, and
Zuid
is
or
south.
Zuid means south.
Yeah.
Like the Zuider Zee.
Yeah. It's the 1 and 2 offshore wind farms off the Dutch coast. Vattenfall said the Hollandse Kust Zuid. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. I'm sorry.
There's not too many Dutch-speaking people listening.
Not many. I know 1 or 2. Zone is now planned to be fitted with approximately 140 machines.
That's significant.
Oh, yeah. They announced the thing one day and announced their first order for 140 machines the next.
Yeah.
And these things are 11 megawatts. I have no idea how much they cost, but the cost for installing offshore wind now is maybe... I would expect it to be upwards of $1 million per megawatt. So I would think these things might cost $11 million each, and there's 140 of them.
Well, when they use bigger turbines, they use fewer of them, so they actually save money.
They save money, yeah. Yeah.
So the upgrade means, as I just said, fewer turbines are needed to generate the same amount of energy, reducing costs.
Right, right. Okay. Our next item, and we have a picture for
this
one too.
By the way, on this website, there's a link to related stories.
Yes.
They're all interesting. There's about 3 or 4 of them there.
I believe it. The next item that we have is from the Japan Times, and there is a picture for this. That picture is the Onagawa nuclear power plant, and that plant is the subject of this article. What do you have for title, Tom?
Nuclear watchdog approves a restart of Onagawa reactor in Miyagi hit in Miyagi, hit by 311 tsunami.
Right. The number 2 unit of the Tohoku Electric Power Company's Onagawa plant in Miyagi Prefecture received the green light after the addition of disaster prevention measures, including a 29-meter tall,
That's almost 100 feet.
it's 95 feet,
Yeah.
$3.1 billion seawall that is nearing completion. And you know what? This
Well, they didn't have a big enough seawall to begin with.
They did not.
They did not.
Well, the tsunami that clobbered Fukushima Daiichi.
Well, 35 feet or something like that.
No, well, at the highest point it was listed, but it was 14 meters. So I guess that might be 35.
Yeah, it's close, yeah.
That overwhelmed the seawall at Fukushima Daiichi, which was only 5.7 meters.
Okay.
Okay, this nuclear power plant was closer to the epicenter and also got 14-meter waves, but it had a 14-meter seawall.
Which didn't do a lot of good.
It actually prevented well, this didn't have the damage of the Fukushima Daiichi.
Yeah.
It did have a fire in a turbine building, but that was all it had out of that earthquake and tsunami. There was one particular engineer who insisted on a 14-meter seawall as a minimum.
Uh-huh.
And he met with a lot of flack on that, but
That never happened.
yeah, but they did put it in, and it protected the plant. And if they had done that at Fukushima Daiichi, they wouldn't have had the problems.
They would not
they
have had the problems.
But you know, now they're saying, well, we think 14 meters is not enough, so we're going to spend $3.1 billion on a 29-meter seawall. Well, they've had 37-meter waves on that north coast. A 29-meter seawall could be hit by.
It's not going to help when you got a 35 feet
it
away.
could get hit by a wave that would wipe the plant out. Even
Wow.
so $3.1 billion. You know, it's a lot of money, but in the end of the day, with bad luck, it won't be enough. Okay.
Well, I've been getting tired of looking at the picture.
Yeah, I think that's. I was tired of looking at it the moment I saw it. Okay, we're up to Thursday, November 28th. Unless you've got more on that.
No, but we got a good article coming up.
Oh, okay. So this is
9 climate tipping points are now active, warn the
This is from Science Daily.
It's a good article. This one's a good article.
It's a good article, and you know what? If you look online for this information, the 9 tipping points, you will find article after article after article after article. This is important.
Well, I think we got time. It's early in the show. I'll list the 9 tipping points.
Okay.
You got a little bit to say about that.
I do. More than half of the climate tipping points identified a decade ago are now active. Leading scientists have warned. 3 of them, collapse of the ice sheets in Greenland, West Antarctica, and East Antarctica, could commit the world to around 10 meters of irreversible climate level rise.
Well, 10 meters is more than 30 feet.
Yeah.
A little bit more than 30 feet.
Yeah.
And the places you mentioned, they're all on land. They're talking about the ice melting on land.
Yes. Yes.
Because the ice melting on sea doesn't do much.
Doesn't do.
It's
Yeah.
like ice cube in a drink.
All it does is give the Titanic fewer targets.
Well, I'll hit real quickly these 9 active tipping points, okay?
Please do.
First one is Arctic sea ice. Second one is Greenland ice sheet. That's on land that I mentioned. And that's one of these. Next one is boreal forests in the north.
Right.
Okay. Next one is permafrost, and we've mentioned
We've
that
talked
one.
a lot about permafrost.
Next one is Atlantic I can't even say it.
Meridian.
Something or other overturning circulating.
Yes, that's
it's
right.
basically a Gulf Stream.
It's the Gulf Stream, and everywhere the Gulf
and
Stream
where it comes
feeds
back.
into, and it's a huge thing that loops around the world.
Now the next one is a biggie, Amazon rainforest.
Yes.
Okay. The next one is warm water corals, which we've discussed.
We have.
They're in trouble.
Yep.
And the next 2 are important here: the West Antarctica ice sheet, okay, and parts of East Antarctica. Again,
Right.
these are on land.
And what's happening is these tipping points are becoming active, which means they're called tipping points because once you go over them, you can't go back.
You can't go back.
At least not easily. And
Well, they do say something here. These events are more likely and more interconnected than previously thought.
yes,
Okay, leading to a domino effect.
right.
Exiting the fossil fuel economy is unlikely before 2050, but it is likely the Earth will cross the 1.5 degrees centigrade threshold by 2040. Something's wrong with that picture.
I've seen estimates that it would cross 1.5 degrees by 2030.
If tipping cascades can occur, which apparently they can, and if global tipping cannot be ruled out, then this is, and this is the scary part, an existential threat to civilization.
To civilization.
We got to do something.
I have been seeing more and more references to the idea that our civilization could be in the first stages of collapse.
There's people writing about that daily.
All the time. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, we got an interesting one here.
And
We got a
this
picture
is
here.
there's a picture here. This is funny from CNN. This is actually kind of exciting. This is an example of what I mean when I say we've got to develop new technologies. This is a really simple technology.
Well,
It's also very complicated, but go ahead.
it says how old cell phones are spying on illegal loggers. And this guy that's in the picture is grabbing these old cell phones, putting them together, and hanging them up in a forest and trees.
Yeah.
Which hear the sound of loggers and stuff like that and call attention to the fact that somebody's doing something in the forest that they shouldn't be.
If they can hear a logger, they will turn on.
Yeah.
They will call. This is ET calling home. You know, they will call in and say, "We've got a problem here."
Yeah.
And identify themselves. So they've got little batteries, so
Yeah.
they can stay on all the time. They've got that picture shows a guy carrying what looks like a almost flower-shaped set of,
Yes,
of
there's
solar
about
arrays.
5 or 6 of them in a starburst.
Yeah, and that's what they are. They're little teeny solar arrays that are collecting sunlight to support these things, and he puts them up in the trees. And of course, how in the world are you going to spot these things? Some of them are like a couple 100 feet up. You know, the
It's
loggers.
a tree. You
It's
don't know
a
they're
tree.
up there.
They
Yeah.
don't know. And
By the way, there's a picture of this guy putting these phones together.
Yes.
Boy, does he work fast.
yes, it's a picture after picture after each one taken a few seconds apart. Okay, that was from CNN.
Did you finish reading about it?
I did, I think.
Yeah. They automatically alert rangers when they hear loggers.
Okay, let me read through this again because I don't think I did actually. Though through his nonprofit Rainforest Connection, Topher White puts old Android is an operating system, by the way, cell phones in recycled plastic boxes fitted with extra microphones, battery packs, and solar panels. The devices fastened to trees high up in the canopy automatically alert rangers when they hear loggers. These things had only been in for 48 hours when the first ranger got called.
When they got called, yeah, they caught the guys too.
Yeah. Okay,
They're recording the sounds, as you said, 24 hours a day.
Yep.
And they call home.
Yeah.
They send alerts, and right now, they've got these things installed in Indonesia,
Yep.
Peru, Cameroon, Argentina, and Brazil.
This guy gets around.
He does. He does. As illegal logging relies on being able to operate undercover, organizations are reluctant to return to areas they know are under surveillance.
Yes.
So they put these things up there, and they don't even, they're a deterrent.
Yeah, they're a
And I'm
deterrent.
sure these guys know how to spot them already.
You know, they're so far up in the canopy, they're so small, they have to be above the leaves so that they can collect the
Yeah.
sunlight. They might be really hard
Might
to
be hard to
spot.
see.
Okay.
Oh, we got another interesting one coming up here.
Yep. And by the way, you know what this reminds me of? Many, many years ago, I heard about a woman who had her walnut tree, I think it was a walnut tree, was stolen.
Yeah.
And this thing had a, big
Where was this,
trunk.
here?
I think it was in California.
Okay.
And she heard in the middle of the night, all of a sudden, two things. One was a chainsaw, but the other one, which she heard before that, was a helicopter. And the helicopter came in. A group of guys put a cable around the tree. The guys on the ground cut it with a chainsaw, and it
They
was
just
gone.
carried it away.
And before the police could get there, the tree was gone.
Wow.
So, I don't know. They figured that the tree was worth a lot of money. Okay, we're up to Friday,
We got a
November
picture coming up
29th.
here. Let's start with
And we
the
have a picture of Ellen.
which
There's
is not
Ellen.
named after a girl.
No, actually, I was surprised to see that.
It means sun ray
Yeah,
in whatever language, I don't know.
yeah.
Well, Ellen, the world's largest electric ferry, has a battery equivalent to 50 Tesla Model S batteries. This is a good application for electricity.
It absolutely
because
is.
they charge on either end, you know.
Right.
Well, Ellen, as I said, means sun ray, and I'll let you finish talking about it.
Okay. The 750-ton Ellen is the most powerful 100% electric ferry in the world. She can carry 30 vehicles and 250 passengers. She can charge at up to 4.4 megawatts. So this is a, you know, this is a charger that would fry a Tesla.
I would think.
And the battery size is 4.3 megawatt hours, which is equivalent to about 50 Tesla Model S batteries. And that means that she should be able to charge completely from really low levels to in under an hour.
It looks like they can do it in about an hour.
Yeah.
From reading the article, it looks like they only do it about once a day.
Yeah.
They recharge it. In any case, it's in Denmark.
Yes.
It's connecting two islands that are 5 miles apart. And it does it 5 times a day, so it's going back and forth all day.
Yeah.
There's a couple of videos on there that are interesting.
Yes. It is an interesting article.
So the
And
recharging
there were-
energy for this thing comes from wind turbines.
Yeah. Okay. Our next item is from KUNM.
Utility to close coal-fired plant. Duh.
New Mexico's largest electric provider says continued operation of a coal-fired power plant using carbon capture technology would not be in the best interest of consumers. Public Service Company of New Mexico made the declaration in testimony on the San Juan generating station's pending closure.
Well, they looked into this pretty closely, and they came to the conclusion that carbon capture technology would cost a little bit less than an all-renewables plant, but the overall savings would be less under this option.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a little bit less upfront, a little bit more upfront cost, but more
Well,
long-term savings.
What they would be doing is they would be paying a little bit less to upgrade an existing old coal-burning power plant.
Exactly.
And, you know, this is like...
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's like getting
Fixing an old car up.
Yeah, you know, I want to put a $5,000 paint job in my 1978 whatever, and you know, it's just not worth it. Okay,
Well, we got an interesting picture coming up here.
We do
Let's see if
indeed.
I can find that.
there it is. This is a
There it
picture
is.
of 4 people, and I only recognize one of these people. That is the woman in the middle, who is Nicola. What is her last name?
I don't have their names.
They didn't put the names they put the names in the article of some of them, not her. She is the Prime Minister of Scotland.
Okay.
And
So the one on the left
The
is
one on
Boris Johnson.
well, yeah, right. The thing on the left is an ice sculpture that has a picture of a map on it,
Map of
and
Europe.
that is pretending to be Boris Johnson,
Yeah.
who was invited to this TV debate and didn't show up.
Well, Boris Johnson replaced by ice sculpture after dodging election debate on the climate crisis.
This is from CNN. Boris Johnson was criticized by party leaders and represented by a dripping ice sculpture after refusing to appear on a televised election debate focusing on climate change. His Conservative Party offered a replacement, but Channel 4 refused it. And the replacement, you know, Channel 4's position was, we're putting the heads of parties up here, not the second person in the party, just because Boris Johnson doesn't want to show up. And there were 2 different people who didn't show up. There was another one of these
so
ice
somebody else didn't
sculptors
show
on the
up.
other side.
More minor guy.
Well, one of them was is her name Sturgeon? One of them also was the head of Plaid Cymru, which is the Welsh party. the head of the Prime Minister of Scotland. There was Labour. I forget what and there's a I don't know. I get confused. Sorry. Any more?
I think that's about it. I mean, I could go on reading, but you've said it all.
Okay, Saturday.
Let's move on here.
Saturday, November 30th, we've got an item from the BBC.
We do that. Let's see.
This is significant.
Mercedes-Benz owner Daimler to cut 10,000 jobs worldwide. Wow.
I didn't like this title because I thought it misstated the number of, is misleading with the number of jobs. German carmaker Daimler, which owns Mercedes-Benz, said it will shed at least 10,000 jobs worldwide. That also bothers me, as it seeks to fund the switch to electric cars. The move comes days after rival Audi said it would cut 9,500 of its 61,000 jobs in Germany for similar reasons. Actually, they didn't say anything about 10,000. They said we're going to cut jobs, and it is going to be a 5-digit figure, which means at least 10,000, but it could be 99,000, you know.
Yeah, I hear you.
So I'm looking at this and I'm saying this might be giving an impression that it's going to be near 10,000 when it could
be more than that.
Could be a lot more than that.
Well, it's going to cost them money.
Yeah, it is.
To do this transition. So, you know, they're trying to figure out where they're going to get that money. Well, a quick takeaway, German car makers have been slow to adapt to the new technological trends, including self-driving cars and electric vehicles.
Yes.
So this development towards CO2 neutral mobility requires large investments. That's what this article is all about.
Right. Okay, we've got an item now from the Indianapolis
we
Star.
got a picture coming up
and that's
here.
a picture of Guidon Design's office.
So that's not a telephone booth.
No, it's not a telephone booth. In fact, if you look really carefully through the window, you can see chairs in there.
Yeah, you can see there's a conference room on the right.
Yep.
And a regular beginning of a regular office on the left.
So what do you got for a title?
Yeah, this is interesting. Indianapolis building gets the highest green building certification possible.
Indiana often falls behind in sustainable construction, but a new Indianapolis building just completed a $2.6 million effort towards certification as a top-tier green office space with LEED V4 Platinum certification. It is Guidon Design's redesign of an existing building.
Well, Guidon is like an architect.
Right.
And this is their own, that's going to be their own headquarters. So they did a good job.
Yeah.
LEED certification requires achievements in a number of categories.
Right.
Okay, including water efficiency, who'd have thunk, and use of sustainable or recycled materials.
In this particular case, they've got a recycled building, which I think probably helped them a lot.
Solar panels, large windows, good insulation. And it's the first in the state of Indiana to reach this certification.
It was previously an FBI office building.
Yeah, and it's been vacant for a long time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I guess that was in the article and I missed it. Anyway, we are up to Sunday, December 1st. And we have an item from Econo Times.
The 5 corrupt pillars of climate change denial.
Yeah. The fossil fuel industry has spent the past 30 years sowing doubt about the reality of climate change where none exists. That is to say, they are trying to get people to believe that it isn't happening when there are no scientists who doubt it.
Or at least sow doubt among the public.
They want to sow doubt among the public. The scientists vote, but there aren't enough of them to vote over everybody else. The latest estimate is that the world's 5 largest publicly owned gas and oil companies spent about $200 million a year on lobbying to undermine binding climate policy.
See that one again. $200 million bucks.
$200 million a year.
Just to convince people.
On lobbying.
Yeah.
This isn't online advertising. This isn't newspaper ads. This is paying people to go before people in Congress and in the state governments and say, we want you to know that our company, which is dependent on oil, selling oil, believes that climate change doesn't exist, and we make big contributions to
They're spending a lot of money, but according to recent polls, it isn't working.
Yeah, well, It is working because
75% of Americans think humans are causing climate change.
yeah, but they've got to get that information down on paper in a
so
polling
somebody
booth.
does something about it.
Yeah.
Well, there's 5 different types of denial, and I guess we got enough time to mention them. I'll
We can
read them
try.
real quick. First one is science denial.
Yeah.
Okay, the science of climate change is not settled. And that's the one we're working on. That's casting doubt.
That is just such rubbish. You can see it in the wild. Ordinary people can see it.
Oh, yeah. Well, the second one, that if that first one doesn't work, they tell you economic denial. Climate change is too expensive to
It's
fix.
such rubbish. It's incredible. We will save so much money by dealing with it. Go
And the
ahead.
third one is climate change is good for us. It makes farming more productive.
It's
Well, that's true, but
No, it's
it's not the whole truth.
farms burning down in California and getting
Yeah.
flooded out in the Midwest does not help farmers.
Well, there's political denial. We cannot take action because other countries are not taking action.
Yes.
Well, that's a slick one.
Yeah, well, isn't
And
it?
5 is crisis denial. We shouldn't rush into changing things. Climate change is not as bad as scientists make out.
You know what's going to happen, Tom? I think that we're going to declare war on climate change. I honestly believe that this is going to be necessary. It's going to be a formal declaration of war by the Congress of the United States early in 2021, maybe,
It might take something like that.
and that would give the federal government the authority to do some of the things that it did in 1941, or 42 actually. On the 1st of January 1942, the federal government went to the automotive industry and said, "You're not allowed
Stop making cars.
Stop selling cars." They couldn't even sell the cars that were on the dealers' lots.
Couldn't even sell them, huh? Wow.
Not to ordinary people. They could sell them to the government, but not to ordinary people.
And instead of making cars, they were making tanks.
Yeah, and Guide Lamp Division of General Motors was making pistols. You know, I mean, this is what they were doing. They rationed gasoline. You could get 3 to 4 gallons a week if you could certify 2 things. First, that you needed a car, and second, that your family had no more than 5 tires.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Never heard that one before.
No, that was one of the things. And then they put rations, coupons out for all kind, just everything you could possibly imagine. Coal was rationed, cordwood was rationed.
Wow.
You know, you could cut your own, but
Yeah, but you couldn't buy it and sell it, huh?
no.
This is interesting.
And you know, we may have to, if the longer we put this off, and we've been putting it off for decades now, the worse it's going to be. And you know, that thing that we were talking about,
Ain't
the
gonna
tipping
get better.
points,
By
tipping
itself.
points. 5 years ago, I was seeing people say, if we stop putting out carbon dioxide now, 100%, right now, climate change would continue for at least 25 years. Now they're saying not 25 years, a couple of 100 years.
Wow.
So we're getting into trouble, and we've got people who are just saying, it's
So
okay.
we've got a picture coming up that
We do.
illustrates this.
Yes, how about this?
I'm gonna
Put
get
it up.
There we go.
There
Good
we
job.
go. Yes, indeed.
That's pretty, isn't it?
Yeah. Pollution. This is from CNN.
It's a good article. In a fight against climate change, no one can stand in the sidelines. That's wisdom.
This name is hard to pronounce. It looks easy, but it's hard. Kristalina Georgieva. And I've probably got that
That's
wrong.
pretty good. I'll give
Sorry
you
about that.
I'll
Managing
give you
it-
at least 90% for
Okay. Managing Director of International Monetary Fund. This is the IMF.
that. Yep.
That we're talking about, said, we can avoid this bleak future, and we know what we have to do: reduce emissions, offset what cannot be reduced, and adapt to new climate realities. No individual or institution can stand on the sidelines. This is the director, the managing director
Of
of
the
the
IMF.
International Monetary Fund. People are
Quick
starting.
takeaway here.
Yeah.
Young people will be the ones either to enjoy the fruits or bear the burdens resulting from actions taken today.
Yeah, by people who are going to be dead when they start to suffer.
Our efforts continue to move forward, but the pace is too slow.
Absolutely. Okay. You know, I'm 73 years old, And when I make a list of the various health problems I've got, I say, how in the world can I get out of bed in the morning? But the fact is, I'm fighting this fight because I want people 20, 30, 40, 50, 80 years from now to be able to live in a comfortable world.
That'd be nice.
Wouldn't it? Okay, we're up to Monday, December 2nd, and we've got, this was a funny one. What do you got there, Tom?
We got one from the BBC here.
We do indeed, but I have to explain how it came from the BBC.
All right. Climate change. COP25 talks open as point of no return is in sight.
Political leaders and climate diplomats are meeting in Madrid for 2 weeks of talks amid a growing sense of crisis. Speaking ahead of the meeting, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, quote, "The point of no return is no longer over the horizon," end quote. I got this and I put it up. You know, Tom went to a special blog that we have for producing the show, and he sent me a message saying that
The
link is no good. And so he suggested a different place for it, but I wanted to find out why the link was no good, because it clearly went to the article I wanted, and I couldn't work it. So I started looking around. I finally figured out what had happened was apparently the BBC had killed the original article, used the link to point to an existing article that was a slightly different subject, but the original article was still online.
Yes, because I found it.
Yeah, and well, what I found was the BBC article, which was actually credited to the BBC, but it was in a thing called Albanian Daily News. And
I think that's the link I sent you.
actually, I don't remember, but it may have been. But you know, sometimes Tom has bigger problems than I do. But sometimes we have to jump through hoops to get articles it's like you put up a link and you nail it down.
And somebody on the other side screws it up.
You know, and so if you go to my website and you don't go to the article that was posted, don't
search by the title.
Don't be terribly surprised.
No.
And the older the article is, the more likely it is to be unavailable.
Well,
okay.
we gotta move. We're moving along here. We got another picture coming.
This is from CNN.
Picture.
That's an interesting picture. That's Havana.
That's downtown Havana, and if you look at that in the background, that's not a cloud.
No,
That's the ocean
wave
banging against the seawall.
I used to live in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and the place where I worked had a seawall, and there was a road running along the seawall, and the seawall was made up of blocks of granite that were like probably 1.5 feet thick and 2.5 feet wide and 5 feet long. These things were heavy, and the ocean waves hitting this thing from Plymouth Bay, which is protected. You know, I mean, this is low waves compared to what Havana would get, and the waves were hitting so hard that they blew the mortar out from between a couple of these stones, and they would go through a channel that they had opened up. Well, by morning, some of those stones, and I just gave you dimensions I'm guessing at, 1.5 feet by 2.5 by 5 feet, made of granite. They had washed out.
No kidding.
They were like 50, 80 feet down the beach.
Wow.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is from CNN. Did you read the?
I didn't.
Okay, please do.
This is from CNN.
Yes.
Climate crisis forcing 20 million people a year from their homes, according to Oxfam.
Climate-fueled disasters have forced about 20 million people per year to leave their homes in the last decade, according to a new report from Oxfam. This makes climate the biggest driver of international displacement for the 10-year period. It's worse than wars and so forth. Well,
there's an interesting video here.
Yeah.
There's about 1.5 minutes. How climate change is changing lives. It's worth looking at.
Yes.
And there's a lot of pictures of this. This is a good article. Good source.
And some of the things that were resulting from climate change that were driving people from their homes were kind of surprising to me.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's really worth looking at.
Well, again from the article, people are 7 times more likely to be internally displaced by floods, cyclones, and wildfires than volcanic eruptions and earthquakes.
Yes.
So that's man-made stuff. Really.
Yeah, this is stuff that is
3
influenced.
times more likely than by conflict.
Yeah.
Okay, low-income nations such as India are 4 times more likely to be affected than high-income countries like Spain and the United States.
I don't think of Spain as a high-income country.
Well, compared to India.
I guess it is, yeah. Okay,
Well, we'll come back to home here.
with an item from the Denver Post.
Colorado rethinks dam safety as climate change heightens the risk for the state's 27 unsatisfactory structures. What does that mean?
I'll see if I can make sense out of it. A climate-driven shift toward extreme storms has compelled Colorado officials to rethink the safety of hundreds of dams across the state that hold water and mine waste. Now that's an interesting
That's scary,
thing.
mine waste.
Yeah,
huh?
absolutely. Included are 27 high-hazard dams already listed as deficient. What they're worried about, of course, is you have all kinds of rain come down all at once, maybe on top of snow that's piled up much deeper than it should be, and these dams are all of a sudden overwhelmed by large amounts of water.
And there's sometimes nasty stuff behind the dam.
Yeah, but it's nasty when a dam breaks.
Yeah,
and some of these
absolutely.
dams are, you know, upriver from
Where people live.
where people live. You know.
Well,
So okay.
let's move along. We got another
Okay, we're
picture
up
here.
to Tuesday, December 3rd, and we have a picture of a wind farm
In Spain.
and an article from Renew Economy.
Iberdrola to replace the last Spanish coal plants with subsidy-free wind and solar.
Interesting.
That's interesting. That's good.
Spanish electric utility Iberdrola says it will replace its last 2 Spanish coal-fired power plants with 550 megawatts of subsidy-free wind and solar power. This new capacity brings Iberdrola's scheduled new clean energy capacity up to 2,500 megawatts in 2022. It's planning on 10,000 megawatts by 2030.
I was wondering a little bit about this Iberdrola.
Yeah.
Well, the article describes them as a utility. What it doesn't say is they operate in several European countries, not just
And the
in
United
Spain.
States.
And in the United States. And the article says they're moving into Australia.
Yeah.
And they got plans in Australia for 650 megawatts of wind and solar projects just in South Australia.
Yeah.
So they're going on, they're not screwing around in Australia. They're going in
No,
there
they're
big
not.
time.
Okay, our next item is from CNN,
It is that.
and I find it kind of scary to tell you the
Russia
truth.
switches on gas mega pipeline to China. Oh, as Putin touts closer ties.
Russia started putting natural gas through an enormous pipeline to China worth billions of dollars, affirming increasingly close economic and political ties between the two countries.
They showed a picture of this pipeline, the interior of the pipeline.
Yeah.
There's a railroad track inside.
Yes.
It's huge.
The Power of Siberia is the name of the pipeline. The Power of Siberia pipeline is more than 8,100 kilometers long. That's 5,000 miles.
There's a 1-minute pipeline video, by the way.
Yeah.
in that.
Yep.
It will deliver 38 billion cubic meters of natural gas. That means nothing to me.
It means nothing to me either.
Which has already started. It will represent nearly 10%. Well, now this is starting to, this means something. This will represent nearly 10% of China's entire gas supply.
You know, why isn't China importing liquefied natural gas from the United States?
They are.
Not
in huge
not
quantities.
in this kind of quantities.
No, well,
they would be much more
it's gotta
interested.
go by ship.
They would be much more interested in regarding Russia as a potential enemy if they had the United States as a friend. And this trade war that we've got running against China, I think
backfire.
is probably the most foolish thing I've
Gonna
ever heard of
backfire.
a president
Yeah.
doing.
I don't know what's going on there. I really don't.
Well, anyway. Okay, our next item is from Governing, still Tuesday, December 3rd.
Maine wants to store, not waste, excess renewable energy. Well, that makes sense.
It sure does. The transmission lines connecting Maine's far-flung renewable generators to the regional electric grid sometimes are too weak to carry all their power, and so the generators sometimes have to be curtailed. One gas...
That happens in Vermont, too.
Oh, yeah, it happens all over. One power-to-gas substation would save the state 75,000 megawatt hours per year.
Well, what the article says, it makes sense. Upgrading the transmission system is very expensive.
Yes.
It would be better to soak up wasted energy potential, not just for a few hours, in huge batteries.
Yeah.
For days or even months.
Yeah.
Which does make sense, and we're seeing that.
Yep.
Surplus renewable energy can be used to create hydrogen, which could then be injected into the existing gas pipeline system.
Right.
Just as a method of storing.
Yes.
Okay? By raising and lowering pressure on the system, the pipeline operators can make room for the gas.
Yes.
And keep it ready till demand is high.
And the hydrogen will burn just like natural gas.
Hydrogen burns very well.
It burns very nicely. Okay, we're up to Wednesday, December 4th.
And we got a picture coming.
We have a
up
picture
here.
of batteries, a very unexciting picture of batteries. From Down to Earth magazine.
I'm trying to get, there we go.
There you go.
Well, they're not talking about that kind of batteries. In
Well,
this particular
actually,
article.
you know, the big batteries that they're talking about are made
Bunch
up
of
of
small
these
batteries.
things. That's what they've got in them.
Yeah, they got millions of those things inside.
Yeah.
Well, battery prices are falling sharply, says report.
This, I thought, was astonishing. Battery prices are falling sharply and will continue to fall, according to a report by Bloomberg NEF. The paper shows prices declining sharply between 2010 and 2019. In 2010, battery prices were above $1,100 per kilowatt hour, but they decreased to $156 per kilowatt hour in 2019. This is a decline of 87%. And the paper says these battery prices are going to continue to fall.
That's exactly what they're saying. There's a 1-minute video here on batteries, which is interesting. And what they're they're going to say, just what you said, prices will fall further to reach $100 per kilowatt hour in 2023
Right.
and $61 per kilowatt hour by 2030.
Yeah.
And at $100, they reach parity with an internal combustion engine.
Which means at $100 in their...
That's purchasing parity. That's not operating parity.
Yeah.
They're cheaper to operate, obviously.
Yeah.
So factory costs are falling due to improvements in manufacturing equipment and increased energy density. So they're getting better batteries.
They're getting better batteries, and basically this is the technology curve again.
Well, I think I've said this on the show before. I don't remember in college studying batteries.
Batteries.
Yeah. And they were, you had one in your car. You had one in your flashlight.
I do remember in college talking about batteries and the role of batteries in the future. Now, this is like 1968. Mm-hmm. There was a fellow I went to school with who was extremely bright. I mean, about that time, he talked about the future of computers, and he had it laid out right up until after Windows was introduced. The sales of computers, the cost of computers, the power of computers, the whole thing. He knew what it was. Well, in terms of batteries, he said, we're not going to do this switch to what it is in the future with lead acid batteries that are used in cars.
It's got to be a different kind of battery.
It's got to be a different kind of battery. And I want to point this out. I do this every time we talk about battery costs. When you hear about $156 per kilowatt hour, people will hear that and they'll say, wait a minute, I buy electricity for 16 cents per kilowatt hour.
It's the same denomination, but it's a very different thing.
It is. It's it's like the difference between the cost of water and the cost of the carboy or the bottle to store the water.
That's the way you're looking at it.
If you go out and buy a 5-gallon carboy, it might cost you $25 to store.
Cost you more than 5 gallons of water.
Huh? It costs you more than $5 of water. That's right. Okay, more on that, or should we go on to our next one?
I think we'll move on.
Okay, ETEnergyWorld.com has brought us this one.
Industries can cut power costs by 60% using renewable energy, according to the World Wildlife Fund.
In addition to cutting carbon emissions, Indian commercial and industrial consumers can cut their electricity bills in a range between 30 and 60% by replacing grid power supply with renewable energy, according to a report from the World Wildlife Fund India.
Well, it says that commercial and industrial accounts for 50% of the total energy consumption, but only 3% of the total renewable consumption.
And
so something's going on there.
what they're saying is that if these companies would switch to renewable energy, they can save a lot of money.
I think that's what they're saying.
And, you know, when you consider the situation in India, where I forget what the number of people dying every day there is from air pollution, but it's a lot of people. It seems to me that it might be 20 people a day. I don't know. It's a lot of people.
No,
20
I can
people?
remember being
No.
in Bombay and it stunk.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And people, 20 people a day? No, how did I get that? It's thousands and thousands and thousands of people a year. But it's a lot of people, and people are getting sick. Again, this is air pollution causing sickness, and they're dealing with climate change. And if these companies are going to buy electricity, produce their own electricity, it will save them a lot of money. And
Bingo.
you know, there are companies in India that are already doing that. Coal mining companies are buying renewable energy, believe it or not.
I'm thinking we're going to talk about that, or one of the articles that we read says exactly that.
Yeah.
Well, let's
Yeah.
move along here. We got Greta coming up.
We have Greta.
Wondering what happened to her. Well, we got to get a
Well,
picture
we
of
know
her.
now. We have a
Gotta get
picture.
of
There is
up
Greta.
there we go.
On a boat, no doubt.
Well, she just sailed back
Sailed
from
back.
South America to Lisbon.
From North America, I think.
Was she in North America?
Yeah,
she
she never
went
got to South America.
Yeah.
She was going to go to Chile, and
They canceled
they
that.
canceled the climate
Yeah.
crisis conference because of riots that were going on that had
that
nothing to do with the climate crisis or
Okay.
the conference. But they said we can't have 25,000 people from all around the world in Santiago if this is going to happen. So they canceled it, and then Madrid said, "Well, we will host
do
it
it.
here."
Yeah.
And
Well, there's Greta, and she's all
decked out on a
decked out
boat.
for a sailboat trip, I guess.
Yeah, I think she's a probably pretty experienced sailor by now.
By now she is, yeah. She's gone both ways across the Atlantic now.
I wonder how many people have done that. Not many people have done that.
I haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
Well, Greta Thunberg arrives in Lisbon for the COP25 after sailing across the Atlantic.
Greta Thunberg arrived in Lisbon after nearly 3 weeks at sea before giving a press conference at the port alongside youth activists and crew members. About 25,000 people from 200 countries are expected to attend the COP25 climate change crisis in Lisbon. Now, she landed in Madrid, I'm sorry. She landed in Lisbon. She's going to take a train to Madrid, I would guess. Either that or an electric car. She doesn't like to travel by anything that uses fossil fuels.
Fossil fuel, right?
But, you know, the description of this trip across the Atlantic made it sound a little rough.
What can be? It can be.
Which is why the Pacific is called the Pacific. Because
Yeah,
the Atlantic is
exactly.
rough, and the first people to see the Pacific saw that it was not as rough.
Well, there's an interesting video on this site.
Yeah.
It shows London,
Yes.
and it shows what could happen to London, the city of London,
Yes.
if the sea level rises.
Yes.
And inside of 50 years, there is no London.
Unless they can build a barrier.
Well, they're doing that. As a
And
matter of fact, they already have a barrier.
They have a barrier, but it won't be sufficient.
It's not enough.
This
They got to build a second one.
This is crazy because they spent billions of dollars on that first barrier.
Yeah, they did.
London has sea gates. I don't think they call them sea gates, but they're things that revolve. They're dams.
They're movable.
movable dams, and
They can raise them and lower them.
right. And when they want ships to be able to come in and out, they lower them, and the ships can go in and out. When the sea is going to be high, they raise
them.
these
They
things.
won't let the ships in and out.
And then no ships go in and out unless they can fly. And they built that not very many years ago. I think
No,
that
not too
opening,
many years ago
actually
at
that
all.
we covered the opening of that thing on this show.
Did we really?
I think
It's
so.
It's that
Which-
recent. And
which
they're
means
and they're obsolete already.
well, they're
Obsolescent.
becoming obsolete, and they have to replace these things with a new set. So we've got a lot of money going into saving London. And of course, if downtown London was lost, we'd be talking about
This is the last item on the list. This
huge
week.
costs. It is the last item on the list.
Well, I got a quick takeaway.
Okay.
When a nation signed the Paris Agreement back in 2015,
Yeah.
which wasn't very long ago, they agreed that global emissions of greenhouse gases must peak in 2020 and then start coming down, or the world will face disastrous and irreversible damage.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed.
No, I think we could talk about this. The situation today is very different from what it was in 2015.
Even though it's only a few years.
Even though it was only a few years. In 2015, we had this show going, and I had my blog, and I was writing for Green Energy Times, and all of which I'm still doing. And when people ask me, are we going to be able to stop climate change, I always said yes. We have all of the technology we need to stop climate change. Today, I'm saying, we're going to have to develop new technology to stop climate change. And the reason for this is because we waited too long. Now, it might not have been true that we had all the technology we needed in 2015, but we have to develop new technology.
And the people who own the fossil fuels have a lot of money invested
They have a lot
in
of
fossil
money.
fuels. They're scared of, what do they call, stranded assets.
Stranded assets.
And they're spending, as we've already covered in this show, a lot of money to convince us to doubt climate change.
That's right. And more, there was an article today in which somebody looked at a common complaint of climate deniers that say, well, the computer models weren't correct. You did these computer models and things didn't happen the way you said. And somebody actually decided they would go out and do a meta-study of computer models that have been reported and see how close to correct they were. And they found the overwhelming majority of them were correct.
They were, huh?
And what was happening was, in the absence of knowledge otherwise, doubt was sowed. And so that, I had friends who were saying, well, the computer models don't work. Why did they say that? These were people who should have known better. They said it because they were told that. Yeah. And they were told that because some reporter was paid to write that, and he didn't.
Money talks.
Money talks, absolutely. That's what it was. And now, what do I mean by technology? I had a conversation yesterday with a guy. We were talking about geoengineering. And, he said, well, we can't afford XYZ type of geoengineering. Geoengineering is attacked because it includes the idea of blowing sulfur oxides into the air to obscure the sunlight and reflect it back. Mm-hmm. And I'm very much against that. That's a recipe for disaster, I think. Certainly it'll dissolve any marble you have on your property. But geoengineering also includes like building stands of mangroves along the coast so that as a barrier to climate change, and that's geoengineering.
We talked about that.
And salt-tolerant grasses and salt-tolerant trees. You can build forests in areas that don't have forests because they need salt-tolerant plants. Well, the world has salt-tolerant plants. We can put them in, and that would be geoengineering. And it has, there have been people who have said we should restore the Sahara Desert to what it was 10,000 years ago, when it was covered with grass and trees, and
it was green at one time.
Yeah, it was a savanna.
As I think I mentioned on the show, the 1,000-year-old man used to talk about the Sahara forest.
Okay, I don't remember that one. What
is
that?
It was a radio character.
Oh, okay, all right. The Sahara forest.
1,000-year-old man.
Yeah. You did mention that recently.
You mean Sahara Desert used to be forest.
Well, we're approaching the end of our show.
I think we are.
I think what I should do is put up the last screen that says, have a perfectly lovely week.
Well,
and so goodbye from Tom and me, and we hope to have you back for our show next time.